Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first Ask the Toxinologist Q&A panel that we're hosting this morning. We're really excited to host a discussion and hopefully we'll have a really good chat about kind of toxinology in general and sort of advice for getting into the field and lots of, sort of different things. So just to introduce our panel, I'm going to ask each of them to give a very brief introduction to who they are and what they do. And as a secondary question, if you could just let us know what got you interested in working with venoms and toxinology. So you can start with Narumi.
Me? First? Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Narumi Shioi. I'm an assistant professor in Fukuoka University in Japan. So, first question is, I need to answer from now, right?
Yeah, so if you just give a very brief introduction to your research and then just sort of say what got you interested in working with venoms in general.
Okay, thank you. So I work on the anti-toxin compound from the venomous snake serum. For example, venomous snakes have a resistant protein in their own body. So I try to identify how to inhibit their toxin and what the effectivity of this compound. So in my study is very interested because snake toxin venomous snakes have also needed to protect them toxin, so it's they can get gains the ability adaptive to toxin, right? So I wanna identify these system also. Did you understand? Okay.
Yes, it's really interesting. Thank you, Narumi.
Yeah. That's all. Yes.
Yeah. So I will then pass the question over to Kartik.
Yes.
Hi everyone. Morning. I'm Kartik Sunagar from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I head the evolutionary venomics lab here. We are interested in evolution of venomous animals and their venoms, especially venomous animals from the Indian subcontinent. We are also working on multiple aspects related to enhancing the potency of Indian antivenoms. So thanks for inviting me and glad to join.
Thank you. And then I will keep working across my screen and then ask Sakthi for your answer.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm Shakti Vayapari. I'm a professor in cardiovascular and venom pharmacology here at the University of Reading in the UK. So I originally come from India, a small village in South India. So I've seen lots of snakebite cases throughout my life and many people were dying. And Priyanka is smiling. She's doing lots of work in rural villages here. So that's why I wanted to dedicate my research career in something that's going to directly benefit the developing countries. That's why I came over to India. I came to UK 17 years ago to do a PhD on snake bites. And since then, I'm continuing my career in this field. So our research is mainly focused on developing new therapeutics for snakebite induced muscle damage. As you might know, in addition to deaths, around 100,000 deaths, nearly 500,000 people are getting permanently disabled every year due to snake bites. And we need to develop better therapeutics mainly for snake bite induced muscle damage, and therefore we can prevent their permanent disabilities. In addition, we are also working on diagnostics for snake bites. And also we are doing lots of public engagement activities in South India, particularly in Tamil Nadu at the moment. Very soon we will be expanding to other states. This is mainly to improve awareness about snake bites among rural population, because this is the society we are targeting all the time. But these people still live in sort of like myths and lots of misconception about snakes and the snake bites. So they need to be aware of snake bites and what to do, what not to do if somebody is bitten by snakes. So that's sort of work we are doing at the moment. Thanks for calling me into this meeting.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And sort of following on from what you're saying about sort of advocacy work, I will then invite Priyanka to give her answer.
Yes, hi, hello everyone. I am Priyanka Kadam and I run an organization called Snakebite Healing and Education Society. This is a civil society. We work in India and we work with people from very different backgrounds and also stakeholders, government level, non-government, NGOs, grassroots level, volunteers, villagers, there are so many people. Everyone can become, a stakeholder in this cause. So the platform that we have built, we have actually brought together scientists and doctors, lawyers, teachers, ex-bureaucrats. This is basically, my idea is that it's not just one person who can help mitigate this very neglected tropical disease. So everyone has got a skill set and everyone has got their own set of, contacts and, the way their thought process of how to approach and how to mitigate on the ground. So I actually don't know why I was invited in this meeting, because, with all the scientists and, how would I contribute? But I'm very happy to be here and, answer to any question that anyone has for me, because I do work with a lot of people, who are into research of about venom and also snakes. Thank you.
It's great. Yeah, thank you, Priyanka. I think we definitely wanted you to be here because the advocacy side of this is really important to talk about as well. Not just, as scientists in the lab, it's important that we translate this to the people that need it most. And then finally, I will invite Kini to give his answer.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join this International Toxin Talks, and it would be good to interact with people. And I started working on snake venom since my PhD days. I was also influenced by the death of people around my small town in India. And subsequently, my interest was to study the validity of folk medicine in India. And during my PhD, I did isolate the component from the plant, which would neutralize some of the enzymatic activity in the snake venom. I think ours was one of the first papers which defined interaction between a plant component and snake venom enzyme about 40 years ago. And subsequently, I have been a protein chemistry person, and interest in our lab is structure-function relationships and mechanism of action of novel toxins. The idea is to understand how they work, and if we find them exciting, we would like to understand their functional sites or identify their functional site and use that to design therapeutic molecules for other human diseases. Of course, I'm still interested in sorting out issues of the snake bite and death due to snake bite or morbidity due to snake bite. But my own focus is from toxins to therapeutics. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So now we have a good idea of what our panel do. We'll get into sort of more of the discussion side of this. And before we start, I would like to invite the people that are watching to type any questions they'd like to address to the panel. We are going to be asking as many as we can as we go along. So please, whatever you kind of feel is something you want to discuss, please get involved. So I think the place we're going to start is probably something that we're all very, very aware of, which is obviously the current pandemic. And something we were really interested to speak to people with was how has COVID affected how you do your work, and how has it affected your research? So I will address that to Kartik to start with.
Yeah, I mean, it has significantly affected our work. We have to wear one of these every day, right, in the lab. I mean, on a serious note, it has affected us personally more than research-wise, because a lot of my students were also infected, and it has had a huge impact on their health long-term as well. We have had a lot of lockdowns as well. So we were almost closed for 8 months or so. So it did affect our work, but now fortunately things are getting back to normal, as normal as it can be in these times. But yeah, I mean, we have just started getting back to work, and so it's slightly better compared to how it was a few months ago.
Well, it's good to hear. And yeah, we're also big mask wearers here in Liverpool every single day. But I will then pass the question over to Priyanka, and how has this affected the work you've been doing with communities and in the field?
So we were in the middle of doing a capacity building of doctors when the lockdown was announced. And we quickly finished that and headed home, and just got saved by 2 days, because the lockdown was very severe initially last year in March. And then nobody had anticipated, we just thought that it would be a couple of months and then we would all get back to our lives, but that's not happened. But the good side of this is that because I was constantly only on the field, I had ignored the need to publish papers, write articles about our work, the publishing side of our work. So that is what we have done. We published a paper, an open access paper on the model in which snakebite healing does. And that is basically, it can be like a reference paper to anybody who wants to work on any neglected tropical disease. How do you work with very little funding? How do you do a lot of impactful work? So that paper basically is about that. And then we also collaborated with HI, and we did a study on what has happened with snakebite during the pandemic. So we interviewed people from 21 countries and got their perspective, and brought a lot of voices. We basically documented not just the victims or just the doctors, but also anti-venom manufacturers, volunteers, scientists, everyone. So I think we've made good use of the work, of the time that we are spending at home. And the other thing is that you can see all the plants behind me. So that is what I've done during the pandemic. Being at home, I've just taken up gardening as a hobby to sort of keep my mind a little calm, looking at so many challenges that we have seen in India. It's been very, very disheartening. So somewhere we have to focus our energy on something which will make us a little calmer.
Yeah, with a lot of plants in our office as well now. But that's really, really useful. And to hear that those papers are coming out is great, especially to give people advice on working in.
Yeah, but our field work has started now. In the next week, I'm going to start. I'm going to be very busy again. And I hear that there are cases, there's an increase in cases. So I'm just wondering, what's going to happen to my plants. But we are going to start the field work. In between, I did one or two, I did go to one or two places, but the nature of the work that we do, we have to get people, if it is a doctor's training or a community awareness, that's, how will you manage the social distancing? So that's like a major challenge for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I will then pass the question to Narumi.
Hi, in Japan, fortunately, I could work in my laboratory during the this period, but and then I focused on writing paperwork in this period, and then I tried to gather the data. So because I can't pay attention to spending time for research work in, yes, that's all.
Great, thank you. So a lot of people have tried to use the time as wisely as they can and do lots of paper writing whilst we've been out in the lab. And then I will pass the question to Kini.
Hi, we had disruption, particularly in the organization of Team A and Team B students. So because to reduce the crowding in the labs, they created two different ways of handling it. One, initially they tried 3 days, and they didn't like that idea, but they made it in morning shift and afternoon shift. And in addition to the problem of working in the lab, we also have issues that animal facilities were not accessible for quite a number of months. And then, of course, Singapore being a small place, all the chemicals and reagents more or less come from outside. And there was a delay in shipping and handling. You know, they would arrive, what normally would arrive within a day or two would take 3 months to 6 months sometimes. So that was kind of a little bit disturbing. But we have been working okay in the recent few months, or even longer than that. But yes, there are certain limitations, but not bad.
Oh, it's good to hear that things are slowly getting back to normal then. We seem to have the same problems with getting hold of stuff. We've got long wait lists on lots of bits and pieces. And then I will hand the question over finally to Sakthi.
Yeah, I mean, similar to others as well in the UK, as you mentioned, we had a lockdown nearly for 6 months, so the labs were completely shut down. We couldn't even enter into labs for those months, but we managed to write lots of papers. I managed to finish off some major grant applications as well, so that went in good ways. But in India, all our public engagement works had to stop completely because last 2 years, I couldn't travel to India at all. So we were supposed to arrange a consortium with the Tamil Nadu government that couldn't be started. So now I'm hoping to get it started in this December when I'm going there. So lots of all the work we planned for public engagement, everything had to be abruptly stopped. And earlier this year, we had to run 5 big workshops with important stakeholders in the state just via virtually. So we couldn't even go over there. So that's the thing. But on the other side, positive side, we managed to write lots of papers, write lots of grant applications. So that's how life is. We have to live with it.
Yeah, it feels like the common scientist thing is that we've all tried to write the things that we've been sat on the desk for a while that we maybe sometimes don't get to. Priyanka, I can see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, incidentally, we were able to reach out to 6 states in India, during the lockdown. So this online webinar, the workshops that we never thought that would be possible. We did that, like in MP, we did a very good number of workshops with, the Anganwadi supervisors, like these are the people who are on the ground. And every month, they assemble for a monthly meeting. So we collaborated with the collector there, and we were able to facilitate that. Similarly, we did, some awareness programs with the UP Forest Department, with Maharashtra. So, we actually worked, remotely also with many people. In the normal, circumstance, we would have not been able to work with that many states in a single year. When you're physically traveling, then you're just working with one particular person, project. But here, because it was remote, and we were able to manage it that way. So I think that's the good side also.
Yeah, it has definitely sort of brought along virtual connections with people. Obviously, we're biased because without that, ICT wouldn't exist, because we set up during the pandemic. Is someone else from the committee going to field a question?
Sure. All right, so I'll go ahead and ask one of the questions that are in the chat right now, and also feel free to post any questions for anybody in the group. So the question is, what are some everyday challenges you face in your line of work? So go ahead, Narumi, do you want to answer first?
Oh, I'm first, okay. So I keep in mind curiosity, people have a curiosity for anything. So thinking anything for family, for relationship, for friends, for also a result scientific work. Is it okay? Okay.
Thank you. Priyanka, would you like to go ahead next?
Yeah, so, I'm not going to, beat around the bush when I talk about this, because I'm very, very disappointed and disheartened with the way, community awareness and advocacy has been looked upon by any funder. There is not a single organization across the globe which is funding this kind of an activity. All the small grants that you have, they are only for research-based study. So, and whereas, you're talking about pledging 25% of the, funds that has been pledged, to this activity. And this is the most important one, I feel, simply because prevention is much better than cure. So if somebody does not get bitten, how nice that is, because this field is it is so challenging on the ground. I'll give you one example. There's so much money put for the next generation antivenom production right now. And I'm sure that down the line that product will get produced, but will that product be available where the victim is? Why are people dying today in India? India clocks the highest number of deaths and disability, and that is not because the efficacy of the antivenom is weak. Of course, there are complications because of that, but people are dying simply because of lack of access to healthcare. So, I hope that through this talk and through many other forums, we are able to look at things in a more humanistic way, and focus on people who work on the ground and how you can help them. Maybe you can't send them money, don't do that. Help them with some some equipment or something that they need. Fund one staff's salary. These kinds of things can go a long way, because people like us, we are working. I'm most of the times using my own money. So for me, if I have to do some work, I will not stop just because I don't have funding. But it would have been nice if there would have been people who could have supported us in that way.
Thank you, Frank. Do you feel that there should be better connection between the different aspects working in Snakebite, and if kind of the people on the ground are more linked in with sort of researchers and places where the money is more often going, things would be easier for you?
So, first of all, advocacy we are doing not for the people on the ground, who are the victims. Advocacy is for the people, in important positions, to convince them that, here is a cause which really needs their support and attention. On the ground, the infrastructure, health infrastructure, that is something that only the government can do. In any country, no matter what we do and how much we work, unless the government of that country starts thinking about it and, puts in fund to address that cause, it's a lost cause. So, we have been trying to talk to a lot of people at the central level also, but it's just that I live in Mumbai, so I don't live in the capital. So anything needs a lot of follow up, and you need to revisit and keep showing your face to the people. That's how things start rolling. Because I had very good response from a lot of very senior people in the health ministry in 2019. But it's just that there are, different things because of which it has not happened. But I'm sure that in the coming years, maybe in 2022, 23, I'm sure that we'll be able to do something very, very sort of productive with some senior people in the government.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka. Could you share a link with some of your work, or how can someone donate money, or what would you recommend? Could you post something in the chat, please?
The problem here is that, nobody from outside India can directly donate to us, because we don't have the approval to receive money from cross-border. So Indian institutions and Indian entities can donate to us. And we do have a link on our website to donate money, but it will not accept international cards, so that's the catch.
Okay, thank you. So the question still is, what are some everyday challenges in your line of work? Sakthi?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm going to say similar to what Priyanka has been saying. I mean, we are talking about a high priority neglected tropical disease here. And the funding is also being neglected for us. That's a big problem. So luckily, Wellcome is put in like 80 million pounds to develop a next generation antivenoms. But as Priyanka is saying, we need to dedicate some money for advocacy work. Because it doesn't matter what you develop. At the end of the day, if people don't come to hospital, you can't cure anyone, even with gold or platinum. So you need to educate people on the communities and develop appropriate policies in the countries where we need these things. So for that, we need to put aside some money that should go to people like Priyanka. And there are so many other people working in this across the world. So they should receive at least 10% of the money, because they are the one working in this 40 degrees Celsius outside temperature and going and talking to people. That's one big problem. And the other thing for lab funding as well, Snakebite has always been neglected. I mean, I worked with Rob Harrison in Liverpool for 6 months as well. So I've seen how Rob used to struggle to get funding to maintain the serpentarium and to run the research there. When I was doing my PhD, I was with Rob for 6 months. And then I started my lab here in Reading nearly 6.5 years ago. But still, we are struggling to get funding. It's a big problem. Maybe the top people, the well-experienced people, will get small amount of money, not a huge amount of money when you compare cancer and cardiovascular diseases across the world. So Snakebite still got a limited amount of funding. But young researchers should be encouraged with some funding as well. And that's really, really difficult things. For example, I submitted 4 applications in the last 2 years. All of them got rejected, except just one fellowship came through. So it's a really big problem. Luckily, I got several PhD students come with self-funding. So we have managed to run the lab all the time. But without funding, we cannot do any research. And that's the biggest everyday challenge. to run the lab, even though we have the motivation, we have the enthusiasm in the field. Without funding, we can't go far. To maintain that enthusiasm and motivation without funding is the biggest challenge every day. Whenever I wake up every morning, what are we going to do? Where is the next application is going? And there are only very limited places where you can apply for funding. Now, where else you can go? We apply for lots of charities and they are saying we are not interested in Snakebite. Okay, fine. Research councils in the UK, tiny little interest towards global health, but they are interested in. We can't say they are not. Yeah. Well, where else we can go? Wellcome is doing this. Wellcome is giving only 3 million funding. They changed all their agenda now. But how many people can apply for this 3 million funding? And how many people will be successful in getting this 3 million funding? So how will you encourage and incentivize the young people who are coming into this field? This is a big problem. I mean, that's the main topic I wanted to talk, but I don't want to take up all your time. But at the bottom line, you need to dedicate, I mean, the funding agencies need to dedicate at least a small amount of money for public engagement and advocacy policy development. Otherwise, nothing is going to move beyond the limit.
Great, thank you very much, Sakthi. I just wanted to kind of mention too, like you raised such a good point about how there's so much funding for so many other fields, and then with Snakebite, there's practically nothing. Like I come from Canada, and my PhD was actually in cancer. And one of my mentors at the time, when they heard that I was planning to switch to Snakebite, they were just like, why would you do that? The money's in cancer. And I was like, but that's the problem. So it's an issue everywhere in the world, because in Canada, there's absolutely no funding for this type of stuff, hence why I'm here in England now. But anyway, that being said, I just kind of then wanted to move on to, I guess we can move on to Kartik next for the same question, just see if there's any additional points you would like to make on this.
Yeah, I think Shakti and both Priyanka have very eloquently put this, said this already. So, but the single most challenging stuff for us working in India is getting permissions from the forest departments. It takes years together just to go out and collect venoms. We are working towards, we are working with the government now to get permissions to house snakes in captivity so that we can, set up something like you guys have at LSTM, which would give us that constant supply of venoms. But collecting venoms from the wild is just, next to impossible. It's not just about getting the permission from the forest department. You also need to then sign, these local contracts or agreements with the local DFOs or district forest officers. So that takes years or months together again. So we have, there are a couple of applications that I had put in when I started this lab, 4.5 years ago, and we still haven't heard back from them. And this is despite, us getting in touch with them almost every week. So yeah, working on venoms in India, especially venoms of animals that are protected by Wildlife Protection Act. So these are the snakes and most vertebrates, and most animals are defined in protected forests. So that becomes extremely challenging, and it also becomes very difficult to work with funding agencies, because it's very difficult to sometimes tell them exactly what's happening and why, what's delaying the sample collections and all. And of course, it has become extremely even more difficult now with in these current times. But yeah, I agree with both Shakti and Priyanka, and I agree with Shakti that Indian government, for example, has almost zero funding for snake bites, which is ironic because our country is the one that probably needs research on snake bites the most. So there are a lot of funding agencies. Not many, like Shakti said, Wellcome Trust, and I think UK government also invested a lot of money. But yeah, when it comes to these snakebite hotspots like India or Africa, I think the governments are not investing enough. So yeah, I would say both sampling permissions and funding are the two major challenges for us.
Great, thank you very much, Kartik. And then last but of course not least, we've got Kini as well for this question.
For me, the problem is not either funding or anything, mainly because as you probably heard from others, it's the people who are at the starting points, they have these issues of funding and things, because continuously we have 2, 3 grants, 4 grants running in the lab. But now I've reached kind of a retirement age, and it's not how do I retire gracefully is the everyday problem for me, rather than continuing to do things. But challenge in reality for us is what would we like to do to have better innovation or better answer for an existing question, or find a better question. So that is the only challenge we do face. That's it.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Kini. Okay, so we've got a question from the audience now, just about, and I'll kind of open it up to any of you who might have some more information about it. But could you explain to someone less familiar about Indian policies as to why there's so much red tape in India versus other countries that don't have the don't have the same sorts of limitations?
Okay, can I address this question? So the Indian government, it takes a very conservative stand, as far as regulatory compliance is concerned. And India being one of the hotspots, which, there are threats about terrorism and drug trafficking and anti-money laundering. So all these kind of debtors, the Home Ministry to give anyone any kind of permissions to get foreign funding. I'm not saying that it's all sort of, they're overreacting, that there are, I have been a compliance professional, my other profile before, getting full-time into Snakebites was regulatory compliance. So I do know, I used to work very closely with the NIA, which is the National Investigation Agency, which investigates terrorism, and also many of the other organizations, the law enforcement agencies. So I do know that there is some truth to that, but yeah, I mean, it's sometimes becomes very, very challenging because, the regulations are so strict. If there's any small deviation or something that you have, some record that you have not maintained, and also the regime which is currently there, they are very, very strict about certain things. So that is the reason behind this red tapeism, as we call it.
Oh, Kartik, you've got something to say too.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with what has happened in the past. I was starting to type that answer. So, for example, I mean, people working on tigers in India, there were people from abroad who would come in and get these samples, and that caused a lot of controversies. There is one interesting piece that you can look up in the internet, that someone tranquilized the endangered Asiatic lions, way back in the 1970s, and that just didn't recover and it died. So at that time, the number of lions were geared. The Indian lions were very fewer in those forests. So all the and many things have happened. People. I'm talking about scientists. Randomly collecting stuff without permission, collecting lots of it. So we have seen a lot of these examples. So I think the Forest Department is correct, and the Indian government, of course, is correct in putting these laws in place. But yeah, I think that it can be streamlined and it can be made much better, so that it shouldn't be an hindrance to science. So, yeah, as I was explaining, it takes almost about 1.5 to 2 years just to get a simple permission to go out and collect venoms from snakes. And euthanizing snakes, as you know, is an important aspect as well for looking at their gland transcriptomes and stuff, and that is something that is almost nearly out of question, because they just don't give you permission to euthanize snakes. So, so yeah, I think it has all come. I mean, it was put in place with very good intentions, but yeah, it has not changed at all since it was introduced in 1972. So.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on one quick thing here. So as Kartik was saying, and Priyanka was mentioning as well, the Wildlife Protection Act is extremely strict in India, mainly to protect their own indigenous species, because there were lots of exploitations in the past, which is really good. But on the other hand, if you look at their policies and laws, there's nothing to protect snakebite victims. Even if a snakebite victim wants to claim some money through insurance, it's not an easy task. They had to submit so many paperwork, and still they won't be able to claim the entire money that they deserve. So it's a huge controversy here. So the law has to be revised and the policy should be revised. And why this is not being revised is mainly because of the lack of statistics. So still now we don't have a proper statistics for snake bites in India. So we do have this Millennium Death Study statistics, which is good, but this still underestimated. The burden is huge. In a country which is continuously going through like a globalization, the rural problems is always going into the bottom of their priority. So if we don't develop a proper statistics to demonstrate the burden of the snake bite, it will not come into priority for snake bites. And again, Priyanka mentioned that they do have their own priorities. You know, the ministries are always very busy. So snake bite is always going to bottom of the priority. Now, if you look at the government statistics, snake bite is nothing. It's just a simple number. In Tamil Nadu, people are saying it's only 1,000 bites are happening every year. In our study in 2010, we reported at least 10,000 deaths are happening. It's estimated, not accurate. 10,000 deaths are happening due to snake bite just in Tamil Nadu alone. And whenever they get a heavy rainfall, it can go up to double. But where is the statistics? Just with the simple statistics, it's not going to be enough. So that's why we are advising governments to collect statistics from private hospitals, because again, in countries like India, most people prefer to go to private hospitals, but the government doesn't collect statistics from private hospital. So there are so many controversies going on. So all these things need to be revised. Until they are revised, we won't get a statistics. If we don't have a statistics, it will not come to top priority for them. These are the proper red tapes, I would say.
So I just want to add to this that there is a task force that ICMR has put in place to collect the death and disability data. And I'm also a part of that group. But, because of the pandemic, everything is so delayed, and, the work it's just sort of, dragging its feet. But I just wanted to sort of let everyone know that there is a team set up by ICMR, and the principal investigators of that project is Dr. Jaideep Menon and Dr. Omish Bharti. So we will be doing collecting this data from a bunch of states which has been identified by ICMR.
Really great answers, thank you. And kind of something that we've touched on both in those answers and previously was that there's a lot of difficulty working in this field. There's obviously funding restrictions and restrictions from different kind of rules that we have to work within. So something that we were quite interested in is when you're working within these restrictions, how do you make sure the work you do has impact, either to change policy or to attract funding? I can just open this up to the floor, and whoever kind of wants to jump in first can jump in, and then we'll go from there.
I mean, I would like to jump in here. It's just because of the passion. People who are working in this field, they absolutely love this work. So, that's their natural enthusiasm, natural motivation. For example, I come from a small village in India. I've seen snake bites. Still, I'm seeing snake bites. People keep sending me photos and this and that. So this is the passion. We need to do something to change this world. And that's why, despite all the other issues and funding issues, we want to keep traveling in this. I'm sure others will comment on this as well.
In our case, we do not directly related to snake bite per se, but our lab does both basic and applied sciences. So it does help in kind of have a place where I could get funding. So I can get funding from medical research foundations and things. because I also work on human diseases, although it is through the study of snake bite, or sorry, snake toxin. So it does help actually to have a little bit of a gasket to allow the pressure building from really bursting through. So you can, I mean, that's how I never had this issue of working. We did, well, our lot of papers are 100% pure fundamental science, but at the same time, because of the research on some amount of application, so it does feed into it. So that's how I survived. So I would say I've been in the field for a little over 42 years. So I would say it was not, I mean, as I kind of mentioned, I didn't have problems with it, mainly because of these reasons, I think.
Priyanka, did you?
I'm
There
sorry.
is a in the chat box, there's Anil Yadav who has talked about availability of antivenom only in the cities and not in the rural areas. Yes, that is true, that most of the PHCs, the primary health centers in the rural areas, they are the ones, where antivenom is not stocked. There is a lot of different level of challenges, and that is why PHCs, they prefer to refer instead of treating. For example, West Bengal, I just want to share this example, which is just a week old, where somebody received antivenom and still died. So there was this snake rescuer who was doing stunts. He had rescued a cobra and he was dangling the cobra and doing awareness work, telling the public which had gathered there what to do and what not to do in a snake bite. But he was holding that cobra and he was doing it, and then unfortunately he sustained a bite and he was taken to a PHC. Now in West Bengal, in most of the PHCs, they do have antivenom, and generally, they give you the loading dose of 10 vials and then you're packed off to the higher hospital. In this case, they did give him 10 vials, but they did not give him neostigmine. And because of this, while he got antivenom, this person died, on the way. So this is something that I have raised with the seniors of West Bengal, the Director of Health Services. I had a personal conversation. Two things that we highlighted is that every clinician should attend the snakebite management, clinical management of snakebite training. There is a points person in West Bengal who goes all the way overnight. He travels and goes there, and the attendance is just 5 or 6 people. So we don't know why neostigmine was not administered, whether the doctor who was looking at this patient did not understand the importance of that life-saving drug, or whether the pharmacy did not have that drug. So both the things we have raised very strongly with West Bengal, that all the pharmacies should at least that the life-saving drug should not be depleted from the pharmacy, so that procurement system should not be broken. So these are some other challenges also, Anilji. It's not just antivenom not being available. There are so many challenges, across India.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something SHE does really well, is in generating your impact, sharing those stories of people that have been bitten and what it's like on the ground. Kartik or Narumi, did you want to weigh in on sort of how you make sure the work you do has impact?
Yeah, absolutely. As both Shakti and Professor Kini said, it's a passion for these animals. It's, we are working on some of the most fascinating animals out there, right? And both venoms and these animals are really fascinating from an evolutionary perspective. So it's the, I mean, that gets us through all these challenges. And if I were to start all over again, I would very gladly do it. And so we are also collaborating with clinicians. We are collaborating with all the major antivenom manufacturers. So as Priyanka pointed out earlier, while these recombinant strategies are necessary, they would take a long time to actually be available for the snakebite victims who need them today. So we are also working with these manufacturers and clinicians to try to introduce some immediate changes to the efficacy of the existing antivenoms. So yeah, that's how we, I mean, the only way we can make impact is through either research on snake bites or by, imbibing this passion for, evolution and for these venomous animals to the next generation of researchers. And I see that a lot of interns who come to my lab who have no idea about venomous animals and venoms, whenever they leave the lab, they are fully, fascinated and, they're fully excited to work on these systems. So I think, yeah, I mean, we can make impacts both socially as well as, scientifically. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that is something I really like about the field, is how much people are genuinely passionate about what we do. Even, people that just love snakes, people that are really, really passionate about making a difference. Narumi, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Me? To me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I also have a comment as this aspect. So we all have many issues, but I feel the toxinology field like treasure chest, because venom compound is mix of the physiological activity compound, right? So that meaning we can get new finding from these venomous animals. So we have many issues, but venomous animal also curious research project as a basic scientist. That's all. Did you understand? Okay.
Yes, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question. Obviously, we set up Toxin Talks as something to support early career researchers or those people that are interested in working within the field. So I think we've got a panel with such wide and varied experience.
Yes. So I want to say the younger generation people are so we have to identify anything. So just pay attention to what's a new and what's an important point for identifies. Also regarding the anti-venom as this inhibits toxin as well also. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to pose to our panel, what kind of advice would you give to early career researchers or those that are looking into getting into your field or sort of interested in contributing towards toxin research or evolutionary or snakebite advocacy? What are the big things that you think sort of younger people should know? Sakthi, would you like to start?
Yeah. So the main thing is like enthusiasm, and they need to dedicate themselves for this work. Okay, this is not sort of like something to generate money or anything, or to develop a company, to develop some money. I mean, these things will come on the side. The main goal should be to reduce snakebite-induced deaths and disabilities. That's how I put it in myself. So once if you set your dedication and then your enthusiasm just keep going, then you need to just to keep travel. Definitely you will face lots and lots of challenges. either funding or people who work in India. Luckily, Kartik is there at the moment to do kickstart all this research and keep going. I haven't seen any other passionate scientist in India for a long time with this much passion. So we need to really incentivize these youngsters. So that's a job for the governments and the funding agencies. But for youngsters, they need to dedicate themselves into this field. Just keep traveling, and that's the main thing. But all the funding agencies, peer review system, everything should improve. It should be much better than how we are surviving at the moment. So we need to put in something, some safeguarding measurements for young researchers to protect them in this field. Otherwise, in 20 years' time, we won't have anybody in this field to work because they will give up if there's no funding. If they struggle all the way through, people will just give up. It's really tough field. And things need to change in order to motivate more and more people. That's what I would say.
I think you raised some really good points, which I will come back to definitely. Kini, have you got any advice?
I would think the biggest challenge for the young researchers is the fast pace of new technologies. So I want you to understand the new technologies were coming probably once in 5 or 10 years or 15 years. But if you look at the recent last 4 or 5 years, you'll see several areas grow so rapidly. It is always a difficult challenge to understand. So whatever you have to do, you have to make it suitable. So the best way to stay up is you have to be up at the cutting edge of the new technologies. And this is also very important for younger people to know or keep up with is understanding contemporary science and contemporary technology. You need to be aware not just in snake venom or your own area. It's very important to understand what goes on around you. That would help. A case in point, you probably have seen recently, last year, I think they came up with the organoids for venom gland and things like that. It's not perfect there yet, but if you don't adapt to these things, the organoid technology is not really very old, but it's not a mature technology. Right when it's growing up, they caught up with it and started using it to kind of enhance our understanding of most of these things. So you need to kind of be aware of what's going on in your surrounding. Of course, you have to focus on doing new things. And as we all know, if you do things for the first time, everybody would remember, at least there is a possibility. But if you are the second one, only your mother would know, nobody else would know. So it's very important to be at the cutting edge, at the top of this thing as much as possible. So looking for novel things to do. And in all these things, obviously, greatest advantage, in terms of keeping up with the contemporary sciences is you have access to literature right at your fingertips. But that also comes with a demerit because you also have too many distractions. Too many distractions in the sense, you get sucked into something or the other. So it's very important to keep up your focus and stay passionate, keep the. So that's what is the biggest challenge, I think, in my thinking, because the technology is going so fast. Of course, you probably have noticed if you go back about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, getting a transcriptome would take really a fair bit of an year or longer. Now with the next gen sequencing, you can get 15, 20 transcriptome sequences in a matter of weeks, and you have problem of assembling and doing things. But then subsequently, what do you do with it? Because now you have a tremendous amount of data and you have no idea how to make head or tail out of it. So these are kind of things you need to be tackling, because it is going to be a problem of course, the big data will kick in, and also many other aspects of it in expression and doing things. There are a lot of high speed technology, high throughput technologies. So that's where you need to be kind of looking at what needs to be there and where you want to position yourself. So that's all my 2 cents worth.
That's great, thank you. I'll then pass the question to Priyanka. What would be your advice to someone trying to get into advocacy work?
So, the topic here is for young researchers. So, I just want to, these are my thoughts about any work that anyone does. When you're in the starting of your career, what attracts you? If you are given a chance to save just one person, just one life, and that person is probably the breadwinner of a family or a small child, what will be your thoughts? You'll grab that opportunity. So this is what all of us we have done. I have also left a very, very flourishing career to do this work, and I don't regret it. Absolutely not, even for a single day. There are so many challenges, and we we were not trying to discourage anyone when we talked about the challenges. It started like when I started listening to everyone, I said, oh my God, it is such a morbid thing. What will the young people who are thinking about joining this field, what will they think? Oh, let me run away and join a more decent career path where I'll be better placed. But anything that helps humanity, that helps people who cannot help themselves, then that is a wonderful life to choose. So that is my only thing. I mean, that is what drives me. We have so many challenges. We don't have like paid staff to project managers. So sometimes, I'm doing all the heavy lifting, whether it is, a very menial job, but all the donkeys work also I do, the director's work also I do everything. But still it keeps me going every single day, simply because what we do. And any of us, it's not just me, we are not that important, it is the more number of people you're able to convince and inspire, and the more number of people get into this, because becoming a advocate, it's very simple. We have simplified it. We have created short awareness videos, in 12 regional languages. I'm just giving you an example. So anyone who does not know, a lot of details about this cause, but has the will and the capacity to, go out there in the rural side, or has the contacts with some institution and wants to do this work. So we have the educational material, which they can go and play over there, or they can talk about it. We have posters, it can get put up. So what we need are hands and feet on the ground. We have created the material, and if we have more volunteers, you can just do it. So even with scientists, like, if you're going on the field, for example, and you're going for some research, half an hour you can probably talk about the awareness part, what prevention, the things. That is what, there is a young researcher called Vishal Santra in India. That is what they do. Anita Malhotra, that whole team, when they were doing their field work, they were not just only collecting the the samples and doing all only the lab work. They actually went and even spoke to children in the schools. They trained the forest department. So there is so much that we can do, only we have that passion. So passion is what is going to drive each one of us.
Thank you. That's a really great answer, Priyanka. Kartik, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. So, if you ask, people who are involved in advocacy, they would say, what they do is what will, save lives, right? And if you ask scientists, they will say, whatever we are doing in the lab, that's the ultimate thing. That's what everyone should do. But I would rather say, I think people should figure out, what floats their boat, right? I mean, if you are really interested in making a social impact, it could be through biodiscovery research, it could be through snakebite research, or it could be, on the ground work like Priyanka and others have been doing, or it could be basic sciences like Professor Kini has done, and understanding how these toxins work, or it could be about how they evolve, right? So I think it's very important to identify very quickly, or in the very initial stages, what exactly are you interested in. Your passions obviously change as you become more experienced in the field. And I would also say that it's very important to also write to people. I remember before even I started my PhD, I don't know if Professor Kini remembers it, but I actually wrote to him. And so it's important to identify role models and identify people who inspire you. I'd written to a lot of people. I had also written to Brian Fry. So I think it's important to talk to people, and even just a response from them can make a huge difference. When you're starting off in a different career. This is, of course, to people who have no idea about venoms, or who are very interested but want to figure out how exactly to proceed. So yeah, I would say the two most important things if you really want to enter the field. The first one is to identify what exactly would you like to work on for the rest of your life, and that's very important because otherwise you'll have to switching careers becomes very difficult. Even in science, you can't really switch. I mean, it's great that you started off working on cancer and now you're working on snake bites, but that's happens very rarely, and I think it becomes very difficult to justify sometimes. I mean, to funding agencies and when you're applying for positions. Unfortunately, that's how it is. So I think it's important to identify what you would really like to work on for the rest of your life, and yeah, and also important to speak to people, seniors in the field. I think both will help you in deciding where exactly you will be in the next couple of years or so.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Narumi, did you have anything else to add?
Narumi, do you have anything to add?
Okay, so a message for the younger generation. Okay, so there are many new organisms in the nature, so you can get a chance to find a new, especially toxicologist field, because many things haven't clear yet. All scientists don't know. So that meaning younger generation also try to identify new compound and new system as well as a new finding in toxicologist field. So please join us. That's all. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. I was coming towards. We've just had a question come in from the audience, which I will go with first before I ask the final question from the panel. So one of the audience members has asked if you had a say over how the welcome £8 million was distributed, and how would you personally proportion the money between advocacy, education, basic science, and therapeutics? So I will open the floor up to whoever wants to jump in first.
Maybe I can jump in. It's really difficult to decide. I mean, this is Wellcome's decision. And when they announced their first call last year, so they made it very clear how they want to fund this. This is only for therapeutics, not for any basic science, not for public engagement, not for advocacy. So they made it very clear. So it's a Wellcome's call. They need to decide how they want to distribute their money. So they are mainly focusing on developing a new therapeutic in the next 10 years by 2030, I think. If that's what their main focus, that's where they're going to dedicate all the money. Okay. So it's a matter of who will fund the remaining aspect. So it's not like how we anticipate, how we want them to do it. It's up to the funding agency to decide how they want to really distribute their money.
So, let me not talk about what Welcome has decided or, that part of the funding. Let me talk about the scenario in India. Some of the states, they give death by snakebite compensation to victims' families. Okay. And sometimes it can be like 4 lakh rupees. It's anything between 1 lakh to 4 lakh rupees. And mostly it is 4 lakh rupees. But those are very few states, maybe like just 4 or 5 states in India who give 4 lakh rupees. And India has 29 states. So when you look at those states and you look at that those are high incidence states, the amount of money that must have been given as compensation, if they use only 20% of that for advocacy, for awareness, actually not advocacy, for community awareness, then that will solve their problem. There will be lesser bites, and the state's money will be saved, which they can use for maybe ramping up the health infrastructure. So these are the conversations that we have with certain people, whoever are patient enough to listen to us, and who want to listen to you. But this is the thing, advocacy and awareness, it does not require like tons and tons of money, like how research requires, even some small fundings also can sort of keep these projects afloat.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else from our panel want to jump in on the question?
I would reserve my comments because I did apply and we didn't get funded, so I would not worry about it.
That is fair.
I mean, just to add like a personal comment, that's what the question is. How would you personally propose? It's just like, I would have said, like, if Welcome distributed 50% or reserved 50% for developing and new therapeutics or manufacturing, and 30% for basic science, and 20% for public engagement and policy advocacy, that would have been really great. That's sort of like my personal projection for Welcome funding. But again, it's up to them.
That's great, thank you. And thank you for everybody's comments. So we are coming towards the end of the session. And we have, as Priyanka said, talked about a lot of challenges and maybe made it sound quite difficult field sometimes for people, but I'd like to pose sort of a more positive question to everybody. And very briefly, where do you see the future of venoms research or snakebite work? What is your big kind of view for the future of this field? So Priyanka, would you like to take the lead on that one?
So, this is a passion-driven field. Like Kartik or Shakti or anyone, Dr. Kini, everyone is passionate about this field, and that is why they are in it. So I don't see that, going down the line, if there are challenges, we will have lesser number of people. And I'm sure that, with so many voices, things can only be better. It cannot be worse. It will only be better. The importance is to, get the politicians in the conversation, just, building anti-venom or the next generation drug or this thing. But if the policy makers, they are the ones who are going to drive it, at the country level. If those people are not, in the same conversation, then, it will again be like a, biryani which is kept somewhere in a locker, and there are all hungry people, but they don't know where the food is. So.
That's great, thank you. Narumi, would you like to answer next?
Okay, I wanna final answer. So please go another person. I'm thinking now.
I'll come back to you then. And Kini, would you like to share your thoughts on where you see the future of the field going?
Actually, we are only just at the beginning of it, as I kind of mentioned to you, to all the audience, is we have so many new technologies which have actually had made it possible to even think about some of these strategies you could use. So that's where I believe, as you have noticed, we have transcriptomes coming left, right, and center, and proteomes are really, I believe if you look at venom proteome in the last year, just the publications will be just skyrocketing. And same with the genome, same with this thing. Every one of them are going up very rapidly. So there is an opportunity for younger generation people to understand what these toxins do and how they do it, and how can we make use of it for the humanity. Okay, although I do agree with Priyanka, Kartik, and Shakti, as well as Narumi, that we need to kind of solve. The first problem is avoid being bitten, and if they're bitten by chance, protect them from mortality as well as morbidity as much as we can. That is true. But at the same time, we can also kind of make use of the thing. For example, you can use the various toxins which really target different tissues, different organ systems. You could make use of it in delivering drugs, for example. Some things like that, you can innovatively create new therapies, new delivery system, new detecting system, new things for this thing. That would probably generate more interest for the public as well as funders, because that would help you to get money to do what you really want to do. You can still do basic sciences, but at the same time, you have something to create. So a few of these aspects I did kind of mention, I think in last year's review, I talked about personal perspectives, what I think about them. So I think if we do that, I'm sure we'll generate enough interest in the funding agencies, because they see there's a possibility of sending drug to the brain, sending drug to the kidney, sending drug to the liver or pancreas or something. So it kind of gets them excited about that. And at the same time, you can solve some problem in other areas. But at the same time, you can do these things. And in terms of novel technology for antivenom, we did propose, actually, I was part of the 2 Wellcome Trust grant applications. Both were shot down like nobody's business. So I thought, then that's when I was kind of surprised. What was the novelty we were expected to write about? So I didn't know how it was. That's why I said I refrained from commenting on what they should do with their money. They probably have made their mind and they've decided where they should go. So that's fine. So that's how it would be. There is a lot of very exciting areas, and you can raise money to do things, what you like. So I would say we have to look for just innovative, creative, new science, and that would help everywhere. It will be very good for raising money. And of course, we also should start finding people who are successful in raising money from developing a drug molecule or something, diagnostic. And now they make, $50 million or $200 billion, whatever they make. If they give 1% of it to snake venoms from where they started, that would resolve all these issues overnight. So, I mean, you have to there is no zero-sum game. No, you have to play a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and somehow make everybody oblige with your ideas. So that's what I think. Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. Kartik, I'll pass the question to you.
I feel we are at a great phase. It's absolutely amazing to see so many, exciting work published every single day. So we just open Twitter. I mean, not just on snakes, on comb jellies, on, sea anemones, and so many different things. So I think it's very exciting. There are so many people doing amazing work all around the world, and yeah, even in terms of snake bites, it's great to see so many different players being involved. I'm not sure, I'm not as experienced as Professor Kini, but 5 years before, I couldn't think of anyone in India who was as involved as 5-10 years before as Priyanka or Shakti or Professor Kini or many other clinician colleagues here. So I think we are at a great phase. There are many different aspects that have been initiated. Even if you look at the development of next generation snakebite therapies, it's absolutely mind-boggling, how many people are involved now and all the different approaches that people are taking. It's not just about recombinantly expressing an antibody. There are people discovering antibodies, producing, designing antibodies to, making use of nanoparticles to treat snake bites. So I think we are at a great phase, and yeah, I would have loved to start at this point, but at the same time, it's great that I've set up a lab in India, and we also have access to all these animals that I always wanted to work on. So both professionally and personally, I think we are at a great phase in the field.
Great, thank you very much. Sakthi, would you like to take the question next?
Yeah, good that Kartik introduced to that. I can just follow up. So we are in a right direction at the moment, because in the past, many people, including Professor David Worrell from Oxford, have been pestering to add snakebite as a neglected tropical disease. Now it is officially a high priority neglected tropical disease. And then people have been talking about funding for a long time. And now at least there's some funding for this research, for example, from Wellcome. So we are going in the right direction. So 17 years ago, when I started my PhD, I was the only one talking about repurposing small molecule inhibitors, repurposing drugs for snakebite, and people used to literally laugh at me. I don't want to name the names, but people used to literally tell me that antivenom is the only treatment for snakebite. We can never change that. And then I used to talk about diagnostic kits those days, and again, people used to laugh at me. But now people are working on repurposing drugs. Matthew Lewin, as we all know, he started a clinical trial. They started recruiting patients. So hopefully Varaspladi will come out very soon to treat snake bites. And probably similarly, like we can come up with prenamostat or marimostat. So those type of things, repurposed drugs, hopefully by 2030 will come up. And then similarly, diagnostic kits will come out, and that will be hugely helpful in rural villages, mainly to find out whether it's a snake bite or not, whether envenomed or not. So people can start with few vials of antivenom at least. And WHO has got their attention, and they created a roadmap. And now we got David Williams sitting at the top of that. So he will be driving the force to push this across the borders and barriers to get something done by 2030. So I think we are in the right directions. And there are so many people, as Kartik mentioned, working in this field, and lots of new people coming up as well. For example, Andreas developing human recombinant antibodies, and Nick as well is screening lots of repurposable drugs, several compounds. So hopefully things will be moving across. My only suggestion for the team is, or this field, is to develop a consortium. Again, we discussed about this in few conferences, but never happened. So we need to develop a consortium with all key people who are involved in this field. It doesn't matter it's purely snakebite or across different venoms, generally on toxins, basic science. We need to develop a consortium, and we need to really make sure that what everyone is doing, so we can complement each other. As Kini has been keep saying, we can really exploit all the new technologies coming up in different fields. For example, whatever the technologies available in cardiovascular, we are diverting those technologies for venom pharmacology as well, to understand various aspects. So similarly, we need to really work together, and then collectively we can achieve quicker compared to people working independently and competing each other all the time for funding or papers or novel work. That's my only main concern, and that's where we need to really look forward. Otherwise, possibly in 20 years' time, we will have a really better drug. Even if not by 2030, definitely we will have something to treat snake bites. And then same as what Priyanka was saying, for public engagement advocacy, we need to pay huge attention. As I said right at the beginning, it doesn't matter what you develop. At the end of the day, if people don't turn to hospitals, then it's complete waste of time. Still, there are thousands of people going for inappropriate first aids and traditional healers, and many people living in tribal villages, they don't have even road facilities. They don't want to even come out of their village for any treatment because they have to literally walk 3-4 hours to reach a simple town or village where they got access to medical facility. So we need to really look into all these aspects, because if they don't come to hospital to take your treatment, we are wasting our time. So that's where the consortium across the field, across the globe, will be very helpful. Thank you.
It's great, thank you. I think that consortium would be a brilliantly useful thing to have across the field. Narumi, would you like to take the question?
Hi. Thank you for waiting.
No
So, yeah. So we have a lot of the serious problem now, of course, including the snake bite. But so animal have a great capability to adapt to environmental change. So we also can have a great ability to learn new skill and adjust to new environment. And then we can learn from the nature and animal. I believe in that point. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So we are at the end of our time, so I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel. I'm glad we ended on a positive note of everybody sort of having a very, very positive outlook on where the field is and where it's going, and hopefully we can continue building on, you know, the steps that have been made. I'd like to say thank you to the audience for their really great questions and for getting involved. And I will bring the session to an end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you.